In recent years, global uncertainties have significantly impacted Africa's development trajectory. These uncertainties stem from various factors including geopolitical tension, economic volatility, and health crisis, each contributing to a complex landscape from African economies. In this edition of Decryptage, ladies and gentlemen, we will unveil with our guest, Dr. Hanan Morsy, Deputy Executive Secretary and Chief Economist at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the stakes in securing Africa's economic future amidst rising uncertainty. Welcome on Africa 24, Dr. Hanan Morsy.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
African economies face tremendous challenges for development. What are the urgent reforms needed at international, regional, and national levels to mobilize sufficient resources while not worsening the existing debt issues?
At a national level, we need to crowd in the private sector by having an enabling business environment and aligning incentives to attract more investments. We need to also make sure that debt is well managed, that there is transparency in the way that it's handled, but also to build the internal capacity to design and structure innovative financing instruments. And we need to make sure that we are mobilizing domestic resources both in a way that is inclusive, broadening the tax base, and ensuring also that we are developing local capital markets to create more opportunities. At the regional level, we need to focus on implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and harmonizing investment frameworks across the continent, as well as having a regional carbon credit markets. We have in Africa a number of areas that are the lungs of the world, like the Congo Basin. So we need to be compensated adequately for our contribution to the solution of the climate change, and that requires that we work both on developing these carbon credit markets at national level, but also working on having regional solutions for that. We also need to invest in energy pools so that we can address the challenges that we have in terms of energy gap. We have 600 out of the 800 million that worldwide that are without access to electricity. So resorting to regional solutions through energy pools can be a very important aspect. We need to also work on cross-border payment systems so that we don't need to trade within Africa in foreign exchange, whether euros or US dollars. We can trade in local currencies across African countries. So these are some of the things that really can make a difference. And also we need to do better in terms of the transportation and lowering the cost of transportation through things like the implementation of a single African air market. These are all really critical and can be game changers. But also at the international level, we need to make sure that we have a level playing field globally. And for us to have that, we need to have the multilateral development banks playing a much bigger role in order to have affordable finance at scale. We also need to have a functioning debt resolution framework, and one that is efficient, effective, transparent, but also that includes middle-income countries that have debt suspension upon application to the framework, and we need to ensure that our voice and representation is adequately reflected in that global system. And it's very important going forward to ensure that, so that we are just not rule takers, but we are rule makers.
Dr. Hanan, as an advocate for turning challenges into opportunities for Africa, what can be done to ensure inclusive growth that will benefit all citizens?
Indeed. There are a number of challenges that Africa is facing that really we can look just beyond that challenge, but on how to turn that challenge into an opportunity. So let's take climate change. We are highly vulnerable. We don't contribute to the problem yet. We bear the consequences. But at the same time, we are very well positioned to turn that into a huge opportunity. We are blessed with, huge potential for renewable energy. We have 60% of the global solar potential, similar for wind and hydro. So all this really means that we can be leaders in these areas, but also we are endowed with abundant resources in critical minerals and green minerals, which means that instead of just exporting, raw materials as we've done, before, we can actually transform it. We can shift our growth model to actually be leaders in that space, build value around that at national level and regional level, so that we are in the forefront. We can turn these vulnerabilities into leadership. It could be very critical on shifting the mindset on how to do it. We need to make sure that we are building on that potential. Let's take an example of a study that we did jointly before on DRC, where we found that it's 30% cheaper to produce precursor batteries there than producing it in China or the US, and with 30% less emissions. Huge business opportunity. And now we are working with both DRC and Zambia on a regional value chain initiative in the battery. That's a great example of how we can really turn challenges into opportunities, but then we also need to be well prepared going to these challenges by shifting our education system to equip our most valuable asset, which is our youthful population, to have the right skills for us to lead in that space. So, investing in green skills, investing in preparing them for the future, that will be also critical. So these are some of the things that we really can do to turn challenges into opportunities. And then we need to also think about how policies are designed. So just as an example, when we need to do fiscal consolidation, because of high debt level, it's not about just increasing existing rates on the few that are paying. It's about having a progressive taxation system so that it's more inclusive, that those that are vulnerable or middle income don't end up paying more, while we have tax breaks and tax incentives for corporates that we have not seen returns for these incentives in terms of higher exports, in terms of job creation. So we need to rethink how we design our policies so that it's actually far more inclusive. We also, another very good example is how we design or how we do carbon market credits. We need to, when we do it, we need to engage more the local communities so that they have very strong buy-in, and that the beneficiation, they have a bigger share of it. It doesn't just go to the investor and the communities are just the interface. We need to have these communities far more engaged and have strong ownership. So that's the type of changes that we need to really have far more inclusive and forward-looking growth.
South Africa has recently taken over the G20 presidency. What do you expect of the new regime in their achievement and what legacy it will leave to Africa and to the world?
It comes at a really historic moment. So it's the second year after the African Union became a member, an official member of the G20. So we had a huge historical milestone with that membership. And then now, for the first time ever, we have the G20 presidency in Africa, in South Africa. And it builds on a series of Global South presidencies. It's the last, one of them, building on Indonesia, India, Brazil. So it really presents a huge opportunity to build on all the momentum that has been achieved with this Global South leadership of the G20, so that we can see results of the work that has gone through, whether on things like on MDBs, on reforms for the World Bank Evolution Roadmap. So we need to see this translated into results, but also it's time to advance things that were kind of initiated and led by African institutions. For example, we had a historic milestone in May with the IMF Executive Board approving the framework for using IMF special drawing rights as a hybrid capital, which will allow the flow of these IMF special drawing rights to multilateral development banks, so that we can have a lot more resources. We can have leverage of these, channeled resources 3 to 4 times. It's a huge opportunity to actually ensure the implementation of that in the G20, presidency under South Africa, because this is an initiative that was led by the African Development Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. And ensuring that this comes to fruition will make a huge difference in terms of resources available for Africa and the Global South. So that's one of the things that we can do to ensure that. We can also, push forward to make sure that there is sufficient, replenishment of concessional windows, whether African Development Fund, IDA at the World Bank, so that there is more, affordable finance at scale for African countries and Global South, and ensure that there is sufficient capitalization also of these institutions. So it presents an enormous opportunity to really push forward this critical agenda for African countries, but for all developing countries as well.
Thank you for answering our questions, Dr. Hanan Morsy. Ladies and gentlemen, we hereby draw curtains on this program. Stay tuned for more information on Africa 24.